For this project, I wanted to learn how influence, hypnosis, body language can influence a human's behavior. I was curious about this because influence is literally everywhere. Politics, sales, advertising, leadership, and our day to day conversations. Most of us may not even realize how deep it goes. This was a huge topic for me because I never really got to learn psychology, and especially in this much detail. But I took away from Chase Hughes's work and research a lot in this project. I also studied different things like World War II, Nazi German interrogators. But I hope this teaches you how influence really works and how it can be used to help people, but also how you can avoid bad manipulation because it can be abused towards you. Ladies and gentlemen, the psychology of human influence. Interviews are conversations that aim to gather information in a non accusatory way. Like a boss is trying to hire someone, he's trying to get to know the person a little bit better to see if he's a right fit for the job. Interrogations are used to test someone's honesty and maybe even push them towards a confession, maybe for like a crime or something of that nature. Even then, interrogators use like subtle strategies to get people talking about anything without feeling attacked. They can ask a question to maybe someone is accused of like a murder charge or something, and they're just trying to get information off that person, asking questions like, well, what if we have camera footage of you? If we look at the cameras, are you not going to be on that camera around that time, around that area where that person died? Or other questions like, what do you think should happen to the person that committed this crime? A normal person would say, well, they should probably go to jail for life. And someone who's guilty would probably say something like, yeah, I don't know, maybe they should get like parole, or they should really be in like a mental hospital, get some help, get some treatment, you know? No normal person would say that. However, many interrogators can use psychological techniques to maybe get a false confession out of someone. One of them used was making the person feel like they couldn't really leave the room because they were accused of like maybe a really bad thing. And they end up staying in there for hours with no sleep, nothing, no food, no water being provided. And whenever that happens, the brain flips a switch and it goes into survival mode, meaning it'll say anything to get out of that situation. The mind is like, well, I don't want to be stuck in this room anymore. I haven't had any food or any water and no sleep for a while, which then causes them to be like, okay, well, I'll just confess to this. And they may get a charge on them that they didn't even deserve. Just different things like that that you have to look out for because some interrogators still use this to this day. Yeah, there was a lot of things I studied, which is one was blink rate. Whenever you look at someone's blink rate, whenever they're blinking like really fast, it means they're really like involved in the conversation. It's interesting to them. But whenever blink rate drops, it means like someone is like either like hiding guilt or hiding something or withholding information. Another way to know if someone's like holding a truth or information from you is like lip biting, kind of sort of like, just kind of like biting their lips a little bit. And then another thing is definitely posture. That is another thing that interrogators have found out, that whenever like you ask a question they don't really want to answer, their like posture just kind of like shifts. A posture shift normally shows like discomfort, anxiety, or not confident enough to like answer the question. So many people kind of look out for this. Steady eye contact and definitely a relaxed face builds trust with someone. That's why you kind of enjoy your friends, because they aren't showing any bad body language towards you. And like micro expressions, like tiny flashes of anger or fear, can really truly bring out someone's true feelings about a certain someone. And then another one that I found very interesting was inconsistent words versus their body language. If that is inconsistent, it can destroy someone's trust. Because you may be able to say whatever you want, but body language ultimately speaks to anyone. You see, language is relatively new to humans. We've just kind of sort of like developed it within like the last centuries. And it basically shows that body language to the core is what truly speaks to someone's mind. Even then, it's like different subconscious things. Like whenever you go up to someone and be like, hey, and you like raise your eyebrows, they also subconsciously raise their eyebrows too because they're like invested in what you're about to say next. And whenever there's like an inconsistency, whenever like someone goes up to you and is like, hey, what's up? I heard someone said this about you, and you don't really like show much face structure, then it's kind of hard to trust what they're saying because their body language isn't consistent with their words. I mean, like, influence is never really like 100% certain. I mean, we're surrounded by influences every day in our lives, but someone like, using influence to like manipulate people can like increase the likelihood of someone doing something that they don't want to do, but end up thinking that they want to do it. And like human choices depend on mood, I would say probably environment, and individual differences. I read a book by Chase Hughes and even looked at some interviews that he did, some different podcasts. But he compares influence to raising probability, saying it's kind of similar to predicting the weather is what he said. For example, like a good and skilled influencer can increase the likelihood of someone saying yes in an interrogation or like negotiation. But then again, they can never really guarantee it. This is why people who try to like persuade others normally think in like probabilities, not like concrete absolutes. But saying that it's problematic, in some cases, yes, because no matter what, something is always influencing a person. We're always influenced day to day. I mean, why do you think students sit down in class? It's because they're supposed to listen to the teacher and be in a position to where they're sitting down at a desk in the class, getting ready to write something down. Just little things like that influence a person. So the monologue technique is basically a technique that removes you like confronting someone. It removes confrontation and slowly starts to like ease a suspect into like an agreement. Now I've shown that it has 5 core steps. First is socialize. Socializing builds connection with the person casually, and it like kind of reduces tension. Second is minimize. It downplays the seriousness of the act, like saying something like, oh, this happens all the time to people, or so many people are charged with this certain crime. You can also rationalize it. You can say different excuses, and they might think through it. Excuses like anyone in your shoes would have done that. You can project, which kind of shifts blame off the suspect and just kind of saying like, I don't know, they could have been in a bad situation or a bad job, boss, or like stress. And number 5 is someone will offer like a alternative question. This question basically gives them like 2 choices, and those choices mainly lead towards a confession. And, someone may think like they have to pick either one because those are like the only 2 absolute paths to go down. And they both end up leading to a confession. Now, how this is applied in sales, someone may show off like a new product or something and may rationalize it. Rationalize like why it makes sense to even get the product in the first place. It mainly like normalizes the purchase even if the person is just like, oh, okay, so I actually need this for this, this, and this, right? It gives them more positive choices to look at rather than just a yes and a no, because you can't present a product and be like, so do you want it? Like, okay, this is a bathtub. Do you want it? Yes or no? Instead of saying yes or no, you'll say, okay, so you're having issues at home with different mold, or like your house is old and you need a new bathtub. Like it kind of rationalizes their product. So I would see how like the monologue technique works in sales that way. Perception, context, and permission. It is one of Chase Hughes's core teaching when it comes to knowing what's happening whenever politicians are trying to convince you of like a certain policy or something. Okay, let's take a look at perception first. It basically shows people a different reality. You make them feel unsafe. And if you make that person feel kind of unsafe, if they don't answer questions, then that is one of the PCP model's intentions. Second is context. You place them in a new situation where like the solution feels normal. And then the third, which is the final one after you kind of go through PC and then you have P, is permission. And it basically allows someone to, do something they wouldn't normally want to do. So like once you've already reframed this certain thing and you've made them believe that this policy is good, then the people or the person that made that policy can put other policies in place that make it feel more logical for the person to like follow those, because they're just like, okay, well, they already rationalized this thing. And then in politics, of course, like perception, people use fear to like make it feel like, okay, well, if we don't solve this quick, then this, and this is going to happen, and that's bad. And then like politicians will redefine the issue, context, to like make sense of it. And then permission, obviously, it's citizens who want to support like an extreme decision. Yes, I cited Hans Schwarf, who was basically like a World War II German interrogator who used kindness in interrogation to gain information. And even then, it worked. He would basically take the prisoner or like someone who committed a crime, he would make them go out on a walk, get ice cream with them, and they would be in a more vulnerable position to like say the truth or say their crime because it makes them feel more comfortable. And this worked. Torture, on the other hand, pushes people towards that survival instinct that I was talking about earlier, where the brain shifts and goes into survival mode. Hughes even explains this, where people will say anything to like get out of different torture methods that someone may use, because people will lie or like invent different stories in the scenario to stop pain. Kindness doesn't just make people talk, but it also makes their answers more truthful, and you actually get the truth out of that. Okay, bait question. The interrogator can casually ask you, is there a reason why a camera might have been at the scene? Okay, well, it doesn't directly accuse the person because ultimately they don't know if the person committed the crime. They're just interrogating them. And guilty people often slip up and they'll say something like, I don't know, do you have camera footage, or do you have proof? Or they end up slipping up or like, over explain something. Innocent people would normally answer simply, no, I don't think you would see me on that camera. Or they'll probably just say no. And the punishment question. I even said this earlier. What do you think should happen to the person that committed this crime? Innocent people would normally say a harsh punishment. Guilty people downplay the consequences and suggest things like therapy or help or just a light punishment, parole. This often just tells interrogators, okay, we got our guy, or this guy's like completely innocent. Because no sane person would respond to light punishment if it was a murder charge. I talked about this earlier, but the mammalian brain doesn't respond to language that well, but more so just like image or sensory things of that nature, or like body language. Hughes says if you like vividly describe an experience, something like muscles relaxing or tightening of the jaw, it usually like bypasses logic and it makes the person think, okay, well, my jaw is actually tight, or my skin is relaxing, you know? Because to bypass logic, you need to create a physical experience in the body. That's why stories with like sensory details can like influence something more deeply than logic can. It's like persuasion through imagery, not debating someone, if that makes sense. Police, doctors, teachers, bosses, anyone in a higher position of you automatically is in a place of influence because people assume they know better or they have more experience. Uniforms, titles, or someone giving you information about someone else, these can amplify someone's suggestibility towards those people who are like in authority. Suggestibility rises when authority is present. This is why interrogators, or for another example, cult leaders, can use these different authority cues. Authority can lower someone's resistance, and it makes someone like obey instructions that, you know, they wouldn't obey if like someone on the same level as them would say or tell them to do. Okay, here are the 6 factors to hypnosis. We're at that time. 1 out of 6 is focus. You need someone to pay attention to you and listen to your voice and not focus on anything else around them if you want to hypnotize them. 2nd is openness. Obviously, you want to tell the person that they're being hypnotized and like ask for permission if they want to do it. They have to be willing to try the process, or else just don't do it at all, okay? Because that's a no-brainer. You don't want to hypnotize someone that isn't willing to do it. Connection, it's just trust with the hypnotist, because obviously hypnosis can make you go down deep, and it can even like open a person to something they do not want to do at all. And you have to have complete trust in the person. Even this, like, I don't know, like, you can use a compliance test, like tell them to put their feet together or something like that, that makes them know that they're going to be willing to do this. Suggestibility, are they open to what you're going to say, new ideas? And then another one is compliance, which is what I talked about earlier. Are they going to be compliant to listen to what you're doing before you even bring them down? And the last one is expectancy. It is the belief that it'll work, because you cannot say that hypnosis isn't real and someone tries to hypnotize you and it doesn't work. It's because you weren't open to it in the first place, because you didn't believe that it would work. The more of these factors that you add in, whenever you're like, you want to try this with friends, or I don't know, you just want to be a hypnotist, I guess, has a lot to do with human influence. And the more of these factors that you add in, the deeper that you can hypnotize someone, which is kind of crazy that you can hypnotize people to do literally anything. Hughes even said that, because like he also works with hypnosis, that like you can probably convince someone to murder another person in like probably an hour. It's kind of crazy. But I'll go more into that at the end of it, is like how you can watch out for, you know, bad actors in, I don't know, just like manipulators or different people like that try to use these tactics on you. So in the Milgram experiment, it was basically people who gave others like electrical shocks. And these normal people would be normal people giving out the electrical shocks to the other person. Those normal people would normally always shock the person if an authority figure told them to do so. Like, many people like felt uncomfortable doing it anyways because they didn't have any involvement in it, but still continued to do it whenever an authority figure told them to do it. The study proved 2 things. 1, authority increases compliance in people. And 2, people will go against their morals if they can shift responsibility to an authority figure. Because then they think, well, I'm not at fault if I do this. I don't really want to do it, but the person who's telling me to do it, the authority figure, is at fault. This like experiment alone like just basically showed how powerful authority is over anyone, and it can override people to do something they don't want to do. Hypnosis can change someone's perception, and like it that is so strong that their body reacts to it. Like if you say like, "Oh, it's cold out," right? You've been hypnotizing them for a while, making them go deeper, and then you say it's cold out. Well, someone will like physically shiver because they think it's cold out or something of that nature. So ultimately, yes, hypnosis can give like pain, fatigue, or like perceived limitations to what they can do. It's also good though because even some people use this because hypnosis can also reduce or get rid of pain because it like ultimately shifts focus in your brain, telling you, okay, I'm not even going to worry about this pain because what this guy is saying is much more important because I'm willing to comply with his reality of what he wants me to do. But even this shows that perception can alter someone's like physical experience in something. Yeah, people like athletes or military operatives use this every day. Hypnosis can obviously be abused by people. Whenever someone like randomly comes up to you and says they want to hypnotize you, probably say no to that. Maybe if it was like a friend or a friend of a friend or someone that's like really famous online for doing this and a professional, then yes. Sure, okay, it's all right to do. Another risk is memories can be implanted into the brain, leading people to believe events that probably didn't actually happen, or even like forget different events in their head. It can also lower someone's resistance to do something they don't want to do. Obviously, we already showed this with like authority figures, but it also works in hypnosis too, because whenever you listen to someone in hypnosis, they become that authority figure to perceive your reality or make you do something funny. I don't know. I feel like I'm approaching it in like a very serious way that hypnosis can be bad, but it has its good qualities too. I talked about this earlier, but cult leaders, obviously, they can use suggestion to create like obedience, something like Scientology, as an example, where Scientology gathers information and then ultimately like uses that information against them. And I feel like the biggest risk is like getting past someone's conscious defenses, which like someone can go deep enough to like break that barrier and make someone do something like completely against their own values without realizing they're even being influenced. Estabrook's writing showed that they used hypnosis to change personalities to create like programmable spies in like CIA. So under one personality, an agent could carry out a mission and not consciously like know that they're doing it. Just say like you have to do this, this and this and you're this personality and it like convinces their minds that they are actually that person and they actually don't even know what they're doing, but they're filling out these certain objectives that they're supposed to do. This caused many different like experiments in the CIA, which tested like drugs, hypnosis, and like psychological manipulation for different like control or to be used for the CIA benefit. Many details are classified, but the documents reveal how intelligence agencies wanted to like kind of weaponize hypnosis. Number one is connection. Cult leaders can build up this kind of emotional tie with someone because of like, I don't know, something happened in their life, or they're just like, you know what, we've been thinking about you a lot. Second is authority. Maybe someone might like show themselves as like a chosen person or like enlightened by something. And it does convince people of something that might bring them into this cult. The third influence factor is focus. It's where like cult leaders would like control the environment and like isolate people from outside distractions like other religions. The fourth factor is obviously openness. I explained this earlier with Scientology, but like have someone show like vulnerability or like different confession. And then obviously using those confessions against them to kind of stay in the cult. Next factor is compliance, just making people do small commitments that can grow larger. And then the last one is expectancy, which is just promising a transformation in oneself or salvation from something. I believe there was 6 factors, but those are kind of the main ones that cult leaders would use to influence people, and still do to this day. Protective instincts in like terms of protecting children or like pregnant women are naturally wired in humans. Hughes says that they're like the hardest instincts to control. But even then, like protecting children or pregnant women, even since those instincts are like the hardest to control or like influence someone against it, even authority figures, fear, or like different group pressure can even override those instincts. So even then, people can trick those people into giving up that for other priorities to their own benefit. A takeaway example, soldiers and civilians, because they're doing things against their protective instincts that can even be influenced by people under authority. It's still possible, but a little bit more difficult for people to give up protecting their children. So yes, even influence to a degree, which is really hard to get to that degree, can override natural protective human instincts. Fear can hinder someone's focus of surviving. Makes people more compliant and likely to follow commands. Love opens like someone's focus or openness and like better their I would say probably like long-term decision making, and then obviously creativity. So that's how love kind of ties to decision making. And even Hughes says at the root of all is that like fear and love are mainly the thing that drives most decisions. This is why like someone who's trying to persuade something might exploit fear to control others, and then leaders and healers would inspire love to motivate others. But mainly the connection between the two is that one of the two or even both of them can influence almost any decision that you make, which is kind of crazy because when you look at decision making and like think about every decision that you've made within the past 24 hours, think about how many are driven by love or fear. Yeah, kind of crazy. Do not fear. Such a common teaching in ancient texts. I'm going to say this right out the gate: fear clouds judgment, and it puts people in survival mode. I feel like I've been hinting at that this entire video, but yes, ancient texts warns against fear because it limits someone's spiritual growth and it leads to manipulation by others. By telling people do not fear, religious traditions were helping followers act out of like kindness and love and knowing that there's a higher purpose besides all the different things that could be happening in their life. And just across cultures, it's basically saying, because it appears everywhere, is that fear is the universal enemy of wisdom and freedom. Okay, down to the T of it all, because I've been explaining all of this stuff that may freak someone out because they're just like, wow, I don't realize how much is being influenced on me, or I don't know if I'm being manipulated or not. It's all like, crazy things to think about because I don't think anyone really like looks into influence this much in depth, but I can tell people how to defend themselves just based through all the research, and I'll even link the doc in the description of this video to basically show you all of my research and how to defend yourself towards this. But I'll go over the simple points that I've made, which is 1, recognize when body language or storytelling is like steering your emotions. Second is stay away from how fear may be using to push certain decisions you make. If like something or someone is like telling you not to do something that you want to do out of fear of this will happen, this will happen, this will happen, maybe look out for that. You may find yourself in manipulation that way too. Number 3, I would say probably questioning authority instead of just blindly complying to it. Just be like, how did you actually get in your place of power? What do you do in this situation? What do you do in this situation, right? Like you may ask your boss this and this, right? Instead of fully complying to what your boss says or of anything of that nature, just ask questions first. And then in this presentation, I talked about like persuasion patterns, like bait questions or monologues of that, anything of that nature. Whenever like I've explained these things, you kind of understand things like the monologue technique or the 2 questions that I told you that interrogators use a lot in interrogations. Just me simply giving you that information in this video makes you understand that. I wrote it down, understand persuasion patterns like bait questions or monologues so they lose power. I wrote that down, but ultimately you've already kind of gotten past that from me just explaining those 2 things in this presentation. Then lastly, Chase Hughes, my friend Chase Hughes, the guy I've been getting a lot of my research off of. He says that awareness is the best defense. When you know the techniques, you are far less likely to unconsciously be controlled by other things. So be aware of this, be mindful. I hope you took something away from this presentation. Thank you so much for watching. And now you know the psychological techniques and how it fits in for persuasion, leadership, and manipulation today.